and Uncorked. Today, we're going to continue with the history of France and history of Champagne and talk about what happened after Louis XIV. Following the death of Louis XIV, his nephew, Philippe II, Duc d'Orléans, became the regent. His direct successor was actually Louis XV, but he was way too young to be the king. So the Duc d'Orléans was named regent and ruled France until Louis XV was of maturity, which back then was 13 years old, to become the king. The Duc d'Orléans moved everything away from Versailles and brought everything back to the Palais Royal in Paris, and also moved a young Louis XV to the nearby Tuileries. The Duc d'Orléans enjoyed the sparkling version of Champagne, which had started to develop across, courts in Europe, led by the British. He was famous for hosting what was called the Petit Souper, which really were, parties of debauchery and mostly orgies. But during those parties, he would serve sparkling champagne, and it would be the women who would be opening the bottles because they had that kind of sexual connotation to it. Strangely enough, as champagne, the sparkling version of champagne, started to conquer Europe, the champagne winemakers were actually still shying away from producing sparkling wine, mostly because they still looked at it as something unpredictable. And back then, they wouldn't enter a cellar without donning an iron mask for fear of bottle exploding. A young wine grower startled everyone in Champagne when he decided to exclusively dedicate the production of his wine to sparkling wine. His name was Claude Moet. He knew that a new era was arriving and that, could sense that tastes were changing. So he realized also that personal contact with customers, especially those with influence, was really crucial to expanding his business. So he extensively networked within the royal circles of Versailles and soon became one of the very few merchants officially accredited to serve the royal court. Moet was part of the movement in the 18th century that saw the birth of champagne houses. Rather than single estate growers and monasteries, private merchants who bought grapes from vineyard owners to make champagne came to dominate. Moët&Chandon, Louis Roederer, Piper Heidsieck, Tétinger were some of the major houses that were founded during this period. Going back to Claude Moet, one of his loyal customers was the Marquise de Pompadour, who everybody knows as Louis XV's mistress. Madame de Pompadour was one of the first ones to realize that sparkling champagne was something very unique and special, and not just vin de champagne, but just champagne. And she was one of the first ones to refer to the drink as champagne. When Louis XV approached his 13th birthday, he left Paris and moved back to Versailles. Louis XV did a lot for champagne. He actually set very specific standards. One, he uniformed all bottles to contain the same amount of champagne. Two, corks had to be tied down with a 3-threaded string, well twisted and knotted in the form of a cross on the cork. Louis XV's greatest contribution to champagne is actually freeing it from its business shackles. Back then, the law was that all wine had to be transported in wooden casks, which was truly a disaster for champagne because the wood would destroy the effervescence. The king changed the laws and permitted champagne, but champagne only, to be shipped in bottles. That's it for now. Hope you will join me next time. Until then, remember, life without champagne bubbles is flat, so make it pop. Cheers!